next presenter is Matt Johnson. He's going to be talking about incident management with PowerShell. Just as a professional courtesy reminder, if you were here for my the last presentation, just keep some sidebar comments and whispering to a minimum. It's a little bit distracting. Without further ado, it's Matt.
Talk all you want.
We can still troll him though, right?
No.
That's
No trolling. Especially from you. We'll go down the list.
People that actually want to get paid.
Can someone please remove .hack from the room? All right. Hello, I'm Matt Johnson. We're going to talk about incident management with PowerShell today. So basically, we're going to go over an introduction. I'm going to go over introduction, who I am, like it really actually matters. Basics of incident management, some basics of PowerShell. We're going to go over a scenario, and then we'll wrap up. So I'm a member of MySec. So if you've been to MySec meetups or any events, you've probably seen me. And newsletter editor or corrector of the person who actually writes the newsletter. I'm sure he appreciates that. I'm also the founder of the Michigan PowerShell Users Group, which is currently on hiatus because of no time, but I'm hoping to bring it back here soon. I am a moderator on the Microsoft Taste Scripting Guide forums and a past judge for their scripting games, which is a yearly scripting competition based around PowerShell. I am currently a systems analyst for a nonprofit down in Monroe. I spend my day working with a healthcare facility. In my spare time when I'm not playing with PowerShell or hanging out with the MySec guys, I'm an avid gamer and a sports fan. And the rest of the time, I have an amazing wife and a future hacker. You are the wife. I am the wife. I'm husband to a wonderful wife.
This is live streamed, I take it.
It is. Hi, honey. All right. So we're going to go over a little bit of incident management before we get started with PowerShell. There's good news, bad news. We've been hacked. So what's the first thing you do when an incident arrives? Well, if you're me, you update your LinkedIn, your resume, and you start shooting it out to people. But all kidding aside, there are steps that you follow during an incident that is just the general flow of the way that you do it. And these 6 steps that are generally agreed upon are preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. We're going to dive into some PowerShell now, so that'll we'll bridge the scenario with the incident management. Have you seen me? This is PowerShell. I know some of you have, but probably not all of you. Looks like your standard command prompt, but it's so much cooler. What?
It's so blue.
It is blue. Blue's my favorite color now. PowerShell is a scripting framework, a .NET language, technically a command line shell, and a whole bunch of other stuff that all will help you automate and change various things or work with Windows a little bit easier, especially if you want to do it from command line. It's installed on every version of Windows from Windows 7 to 2008 R2. You can't uninstall it, so get used to it. And Microsoft is building a lot of products around this. And currently it's in version 3. They have announced version 4 last week. So this is a product they're continually developing and working on. So it's something, if you have access or manage Windows systems or do anything with Windows systems, it's something to start learning and paying attention to. PowerShell revolves around what they call a commandlet. Of course, Microsoft has to go rename everything that we're familiar with, right? So you're usually executables or files that you run. What commandlets are either compiled or written in the PowerShell language to actually enable you to do certain things. Some examples are like get help, which obviously would get help. Get command would find out all the commands on the system or if a command exists. But there are also things like new, AD user, and other commandlets that help you manage the Windows system. Some more basic language information I was get going is that PowerShell commandlets generally come in the form of a verb-noun format. So get, set, copy, compare. and then your choice of nouns. Your nouns can be anything. The verbs is what's standardized in PowerShell. There's currently, I believe, 98 verbs out there. So when you're working with PowerShell, it kind of lowers the bar a little bit so that you can discover more commandlets or various things with PowerShell a little bit easier, because generally the people who are writing stuff or sharing stuff on the internet all use this format and the verb noun with the standardized things. Microsoft has a big old help article on why not to use a new verb that they haven't standardized upon, if you like to listen to rules. Also, there's aliases. So all the people who are Linux admins or admins of other systems, there are easier ways so that you can get more familiar with PowerShell quickly. Like get child item is the PowerShell command to dump a directory listing or registry listing. But that also is alias to ls for the Unix guys, or dir for the people who love the Windows command prompt. So it makes the bar a little bit lower. You can make aliases for any of the stuff that you want to do to make your shorthand typing a little bit easier as you're working in the shell. Of course, you shouldn't probably rely on aliases as you go along, because you can't guarantee that an alias will be on someone's box as they're using it. And as with learning any new language or scripting language or anything else, help is very important. Well, Microsoft's help in PowerShell is amazing. It gives you full examples and details and all the stuff you'd really want to know about running that command, all from the commandlet get help. And for those Unix guys, there's an alias for man, so you can type in man in the name of the commandlet and get your help. So again, lowering the bar for entry for you guys. So I'm not one of them. All right, so let's go into a scenario. Small businesses, at least in my experience and past experience has been talking, don't really focus on incident management, because we don't get hacked. We're a small business. There's not a reason to do that. But our scenario revolves around one guy at an IT shop. His name is Wolf.
Oh, wait a minute.
You're not up here, so I'm going to pick on you.
Stop the stream.
All right, reverse trolling.
Wolf is my junior admin. So we're in the business of deploying servers. Currently, we have about 100 employees, and then we're adding our 10th server to the network. And Wolf is, of course, helping me out doing this. Wolf, unfortunately, makes one wrong move.
You have to catch a lot more boulders than that.
This guy shows up as the result of Wolf's actions. Well, probably not this guy, but going forward, we're going to discuss what happens from the time that Wolf makes this critical mistake, or before Wolf makes this critical mistake, all the way to cleaning up and recovery from said mistake.
When do I get with Eve Adams to enter my resume?
You should have already done that.
Okay, good. Yesterday.
All right. So the way that incident management works, and the way that we're going to look at this, is that incident management doesn't start when the incident occurs. Incident management starts way before, in the preparation phase. You need to start thinking about what may happen in the future as you go through things. So as we move from preparation, we're going to go into the other layers, and each layer continually builds upon each other until we go back to the beginning again. And just as a refresher, we have 100 employees, 10 servers, Wolf's wrong move. And we're going to step now through each of these 6 phases and go through with PowerShell how we can enable this. So let's start with preparation. The boss man comes in and says, hey, Matt, we need a new server. And how long do we need? And I'm like, it's about a week. So after I go through and I get all my documentation together and I turn in my purchase order and get approval for the price and get this all set and ready to go, we're going to start looking at building the system, preparing it, and getting ready. before we get going with that, Microsoft has a deep integration with PowerShell. You're going to find a lot of Microsoft products out there with PowerShell support to help ease the preparation or management of your systems. Microsoft has products out there like SQL or Link or SharePoint that all are PowerShell enabled. Currently, if you are at Microsoft and developing a product, you must have PowerShell support. It's not going to have PowerShell support. It must have it to actually be shipped to the customer. So if you're dealing with Microsoft products, everything going forward, you can script and manage and maintain all with scripts and automation. But other vendors are supporting as well, like VMware, Compellent, Symantec. This is just a small sampling of the list of people who are enabling PowerShell. Quest uses it. There are just tons of them out there, and now is really the time to start looking at this inside your preparation. So when I build servers, there's a couple things that I do, and I built upon this as I go on in my career in different places, is that I start standardizing builds with scripts. So I can do the Windows install, push the deploy out, but then also now configure my firewall and configure my file systems and my partitioning, my drives, all that set up. And I can do that all with Windows 8 in 2012 and even the further versions going out. But if you don't have Windows 8 in 2012 with all the cool, pretty new commandlets, there's modules, or what they call add-ons to the language. So you can download something like Carbon, which will help you modify and manage the system from an automation standpoint. So as I'm going through the preparation and I'm setting up and I'm getting my system configured, one of the things I do before I put it into production is baseline my systems. And I want to know what's running on the system, what users are on the systems, what's the configuration setup. But I also take this information and store it into a source control server. And yeah, it may seem a little overkill in the beginning, but going forward, I then now have a record that's set in stone of where I have been, what my system's configurations were, so that I can, during an incident or as subsequent setups, I'm able to look back and say, okay, this is how it's set up, and I can direct junior admins like Wolf to be able to to do this work in an automated fashion. So here's some PowerShell code that actually gets the local users on the system. This can be changed and pointed at any workstation or server, and it'll dump the local users on the system. Because as we all know, sometimes IT admins or whoever creates another user on there to just try to get it to work. And unfortunately, that happens. But also in an incident, this is a key piece of information. With PowerShell, you can also do groups. And I don't see a lot of groups, at least in the environments that I work, but some people may have local groups. And you can take this and point it at a computer and dump all the groups. This all stuff can also be modified to run against your Active Directory environment or other systems in there to pull all this information and save it. And of course, local administrators. You know, hey, why is Bob's account in the local administrator group? Well, Bob's account shouldn't be there. Maybe Wolf put it there. Who knows? So you'd baseline your local admins as well. And the code may look daunting, but once you start getting used to using PowerShell and working with it, it's actually kind of has a flow to it that you can kind of understand if you've been managing Windows systems or had access to one for a little while. Some of the language stuff is kind of goofy, but as you work with it, you'll get more proficient. Also, we baseline the services. So I don't know how many times I've gone, I'm like, well, hey, why is that service started? This shouldn't be this way. So this is another way that I can make sure that I have a set-in-stone record of what's supposed to be running on a server. So during an incident or during cleanup, I can actually look to see, oh, hey, this shouldn't be running, this should be running, stuff like this. This PowerShell code actually takes a list of computers that I pre-generated and actually gets all the service account information. This code is available on the GitHub site that I have listed at the end of my slides. But you can check tons of computers really quickly with PowerShell and scan your whole environment, depending on number of systems in a short period of time. installed software. During instance or other things, you may find software, things that shouldn't belong on there. So here's another way that I can actually record and save this information for further use, and compare the current stuff during an incident and see what has changed. Microsoft, because it's kind of brilliant, but they have this commandlet called export CLI XML. And because PowerShell actually works with objects, so there are certain things that the environment gives you that to be able to sort, or you can check for unique items all from within a commandlet. So all these are just those previous code wrapped up into something that I can pipe over to this export CLI XML file that I store inside my source control system, so that then I can go back in a later phase and pull all this information into a format that PowerShell understands, instead of just text, or instead of a CSV file or a Excel file. I can actually work with this all in PowerShell and do what I need to do. Enable auditing. This is just one small example of something that you can enable to get auditing on. This is a DNS logging. This will log all the traffic, all the DNS queries against your DNS server if it's a Windows box. And logging is a very critical, important part of incident management. And this is just one area that Windows is now letting you automate in Excel and use going forward. So some preparation key practices. So integrate your systems builds into your disaster recovery and incident response process. Because just starting from, oh my God, we've been hacked or breached, that's not a good starting point. You need to start thinking about your system builds way before something bad happens. Also, script anything that you can to make it reproducible, or you can run it and ensure that the configuration is standard across all networks. Microsoft just announced that in PowerShell version 4, you'll be able to do this much easier. What?
You need some help?
Yeah, do you want to get up here, Wolf?
Delegate, give it to your assistant.
Yeah. Yes. Come on, Wolf. Come up here, my assistant. Also, baseline your systems so that you know what's running and going on during other phases of the incident. This is one of the most important and crucial things that I think that we all should be doing. Also, log everything. If it's not logged, it didn't happen. You should log enough so that if it's not logged, it didn't happen. That's better. So if you don't automate this, or you don't have this in place, you need to go fix this before you can move on to actually start detecting and taking care of your incident response. So identification. So Wolf goes and he starts working on the server, and he's like, hey, I need to driver for the software. And of course, we've all done this. We've all gone out on the internet and found a driver for some piece of hardware and download it from some sketchy site with the banners that you're like, whoa, probably shouldn't browse this at work kind of banners. And Wolf goes out there, not that he would do this, but
Free driver download.
Yeah, free driver downloads, of course. So unfortunately, when Wolf goes out there, he gets hit by a Java drive-by download, because for some reason this download website uses Java as its download manager. Seems safe and legit to me. So in 12 hours after Wolf does this, we get compromised. And that's the part where all this fun begins. So we're just going to kind of use this exploit or this vulnerability as an example as for the Java drive-by download. This is what is being termed as the Swiss Army knife of exploits when it comes to Java. It works reliably well, but all it does is bypass the security checks so that you can run code on a system. So that's where this is the wonderful thing that Wolf got us into trouble with. So first, we're going to start identifying using indicators of compromise. So PowerShell has logging built in. And you can, anything you do at the command prompt or at the PowerShell window, you can actually record, from the results of a command to the errors that you mistype to all the output. This all gets logged and recorded, because during an incident, all your notes tend to be very important as you're going through this. So Microsoft has these two command lists called start and stop transcript. All you have to do is start transcript, stop transcript. Or when you close your window, it'll automatically close your transcript. And it saves it on a file that you can go back and review and stuck into your note management system or whatever you're using to pull this information together. Now it's time to compare. Because we took that time in the preparation phase, we're going to start comparing the results of what currently is on the system to what was on the system before. So here's the PowerShell where we take that CLI XML file that we actually made earlier and compare it against what currently is there. So all I'm doing is just taking and comparing, and we're going to see what has changed with the local administrator accounts. PowerShell makes this really easy. Also, we're going to start looking for things in our event log. And if anyone's worked with Windows event logs, paging through that thing is just horrendous. And the get event log and show event log, you can actually now start searching through your event logs at a command line level or at a automated level so that you can pull this information out. Yeah, you should have a log management server in place, but if you're a small business, what are the chances of you really having this in there? This is these two command lists are something that I use on a very regular basis because I can fine-tune all this information. So last year at BSides 12, James Foster decided to look at that, Billy, your slide. He decided he did a great step and talked about incident response and preparing for it. And logs was the big thing that stuck out. Log everything. Log, 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 log. If you're not logging, you can't get started at all in any of this. And you need to make sure that you can collect all this information and know how to interpret and understand your logs at a level that, oh yeah, I know how to use the Windows event log, but do you really understand the Windows event log? Have you spent time in it? Have you looked at it? Have you looked at the event log or the Windows IAS log, or your Apache log? Do you really understand it when you look at it? That's a very important thing, because you need to start looking at this as you go through an incident. But even before, in preparation and all that, you have to really focus on this. So some key practices with identification. Record all your information. If you're not storing your information or writing down your information, use PowerShell's built-in stuff as you're going through this so that you can save this information for later use. Also, use honey tokens. The nice thing about us baselining is that we can kind of use this as a honey token. So if there's something added or something changed, we can be able to spot this pretty easily using PowerShell with the compare and go forward to see what, that doesn't look right. So let's compare it against what we have in our source system. Also, treat your logs as a defensive tool. You need to understand them, know them, be intimate with them to the point where it just seems wrong that you're spending this much time looking at a log, because you need to know what's going on. Where's Dot Hack?
Just don't take pictures.
Hey. All right, so let's move on to containment. This piece of code right here is one that I use, that I've used in instance before. This actually, as soon as a process is launched with the process ID that I give it, it will kill that process. So you try to launch it, goes down. Try to launch it, goes down. So as I'm trying to stop something from keep on going, this piece of code, outside shutting off the box, will stop a process from going so that you can start collecting and analyzing things. It can be a lifesaver. But the only little trick to this is that as soon as you close your PowerShell window, it goes away. So you got to kind of, you got to keep a PowerShell window up while this is running to do it. You can make it a permanent consumer, but that's more lines than I can fit onto a slide and make it readable. So as we're cleaning up, or we're containing it, we want to make sure that we move our data off the system. The system's compromised. We don't want our finance data and our payroll information, because I know I like to get paid, and the peanuts I still pay Wolf, he still likes them. So, so as we move the data, we want to move the data. In Windows, we use actually DFS to kind of mask the location of where this data is. So behind the scenes, I just start shipping all the finance data off to our new temporary server during this instance, so that we can take the server offline and clean it, so eventually we can flip it back. So these are just 2 PowerShell commands that PowerShell has given us, or Microsoft has given us, to be able to make our life a little easier. So this will just point our target over to there after I restore from backup onto the new system, and our finance people are off and running. With, like, you do this at night, little downtime. Here's what I call Love Square. So PowerShell loves .NET, because PowerShell is built on .NET. Well, .NET loves SSH. Well, they're friends, kind of friends. They like each other, but, you know, they date sometimes. But and then SSH and your network switches are friends, or sometimes more than friends. So basically, I can take PowerShell and control my network switches all through just, with a little tweaking in my Love Square. So we have measured response. So the first thing, you want to see if you can stop what's going on. You start limiting the bandwidth to the affected server. So I can set QoS with PowerShell. And this is all just stuff that you can take and you can build upon. Or I can move my machine to a quarantine land so that I can clean it up and do forensics or whatever I need to. Or you can switch it off with PowerShell, all with just using an SSH module built into and built upon with .NET. Excuse me. So containment key practices. So follow your disaster recovery process that hopefully you already have in place, but utilize PowerShell as you're going through it on a Windows system to help make your life easier. Also, use a measured response. Try not to kill everything right away so that you can do forensics or see what's going on with the system before you eventually kill it. And automation is crucial. I don't want you to I shouldn't have to remember how to go do something in a switch. I need to automate as much as I can as possible, so I can just type in kill port and then the port name, and it'll go off and kill the switch on my server. So automation is still important even when systems aren't exactly Windows systems or directly attached. There's things that you can build with PowerShell to make this all possible. Eradication. Let's destroy this thing. This thing, as we all know, after something gets compromised, you really can't trust it again. At least I don't. You get a virus on your computer, I'm sorry, we're going to have to wipe that. I know it's not what you want to hear, but we have to. It's never the same. So because I was brilliant, and after I hired Wolf, I became brilliant, and I put all my scripts for my builds, and I put my baselines all in my source control server. Now my time to rebuild the server is from a week down to hours. Just push my install, start running my scripts against it, get it all set up. This is where PowerShell especially shines when we're moving through this process. So eradication key practices. Just kill the server. There's no real reason to put this box back online. Replay your build scripts. Make sure that everything that you've done in the past in your preparation can continue on as you go through the life cycle of this, and start fresh. Like I said, you can't really trust the system if it's been compromised. Recovery. So now that I have my system back up online and I restore my data, I'm going to do the reverse of those commandlets that I showed earlier and push my information back to the correct location. So finance can still give me my paycheck, but they can still work, and they'd be none the wiser that there was a system that was compromised, and they probably know, but they're none the wiser that their data's been moved around for a day. Then I'm going to redo my baselines, because to be honest, things may have changed. You may have a different change in scope to a server, or some other settings that you may want to have changed. So I'm going to rerun my baselines and recheck them back into my source control system, because going forward, we're going to want to make sure that everything is still very methodically thought out and executed, because that makes our lives easier. All right, so we're going to change the passwords. And everyone groans, oh, we got to change our passwords, we've been breached. Well, here's a command. Wouldn't exactly use this, make sure defense is a little weaker, but it shows you that we can go ahead and change every user account on the system's local system's password. This all sets it to the same one, but we can modify this and randomly generate that password for you. But change all your passwords. Change all the passwords. Now let's target Active Directory, because I've been in an incident before where we were breached and they got the local system password and then they moved on to cracking the domain passwords. So let's change all these. This again, don't use as this way, because it's going to set all your passwords to the freaky new password and make your system a little less secure. But it's just basically, I'm getting all my Active Directory users, setting the password and forcing it, and there it goes. It changes everyone's password. So I can take this and pipe in a list of Excel spreadsheet with username and password and change everyone across the board. So PowerShell enables you to be able to do this quickly. Monitor file system changes. The next piece of code I have on here will actually look for changes in the file system. So if you add, create, modify, delete, do anything to the file, it'll actually, I can do anything I want with it. I can send an email, say, hey, this file in C Windows has changed, or I can dump it to my log management server, or I can write it to my event log so that it's eventually picked up by my log management server. This code does go away with the PowerShell session, and again, you can make it something more permanent on your system in lieu of having some way to monitor this a little more efficiently. Kind of a lot of stuff in here, but all it is just using some .NET stuff to make sure that we include subdirectory, make sure events can actually be notified, because for some reason on a Windows system you can have events that don't notify you of things. And then just this one's for created, actually writes to my actual screen that a new file was created. So this code is on the PoshSec GitHub site, so you can actually download this and play around with it, and you can creep your coworkers out. Hey, I know you changed that file. How do you know? Oh, it's in my event log. So
I wonder why you're doing it, friends.
Hey. So some key practices in recovery. Execute your disaster recovery process, the restoration. Put your stuff back in place. Put all your data back. Start monitoring your stuff. Make sure that you know what's going on in the system. Happened once, it may happen again. Wolf may need another download from the CD download site. You never know. But
Look, man, don't judge. They have good pictures.
He's seen those pictures.
So just monitor these systems going forward. And finally, lessons learned. And this is one of the huge parts about this. We went back, Wolf and I, when we were talking about this, and we did this talk at Motor City ISSA, but when we were doing this before, we went back and looked to see how many actually incident response discussions happened at BSides or at ISSA or any of the conferences around it. Really not a lot. Maybe I found a handful of them. And two, in fact. The big part about this is talking about it. Disaster recovery, incident response needs to be talked about. We need to discuss with each other. We need to share tips and tricks and all this stuff so that we have lessons learned. How do you learn to go and monitor this? You talk about it. You have discussions about it, and lessons learned is where you do it, especially in your own environment. After we take away Wolf's ability to download things by hardening IE to put actually the admin, that annoying thing on a Windows server that doesn't let you download or go to any websites, well, let's turn that back on, because Wolf shouldn't be browsing the internet on our servers to begin with. Harden Java. This attack was brought on by Java. Oracle provides these config files that you can actually take and configure Java to be hardened so it doesn't do some of these things, and it watches some further processes in Java so that there's less of a likelihood to get attacked, but that's not really likely. But so here's a way to do this, and it just copies. All this does is copy these files to the file system on the file server, so that when Wolf goes back there and tries to do it again, it stops it.
Oh, you can't stop.
So one of the things that drives me nuts is during instance and we're doing cleanup and we're deciding that we need to change some group policy things. I need to run a group policy refresh on every system across my environment. Instead of saying, hey everybody, why don't you reboot your computer today, or force them to reboot, this will actually go across every computer in your entire network and do a GP update on the things that can be refreshed without a reboot. This simple line goes through and it does it. It's efficient and simple. So lessons learned. We're going to review our PowerShell logs and all the information that we have. We're going to perform a root cause analysis as well to see what happened and why we need to fire Wolfgang. Also, implement controls to protect these from either policy controls or technical controls. So policy controls will be like no browsing on the web server, or you need to make sure that you follow the set guidelines for your incident response or system build. But you also have technical controls like hardening IE or doing Java monitoring. In summary, these 6 things can all be done with a little forethought. Preparation is huge when you're doing this, and PowerShell helps you do this, but also PowerShell will help you with all 6 steps in the incident response process. So I'm just saying, just think about it. Start building this stuff in. This is not rocket science. This is all simple stuff that you can do, not only help a small business, but also the businesses that you guys are all in, potentially. So when we did this before, Wolf and I did a recording and put it out on the MySec YouTube channel. And some guy at Microsoft named Jeffrey Snover, who technically happens to be the head of the Windows division for making their products, actually gave kudos with what information that we had to share, but then also asked Wolf and I, weird but cool, what can we do to make incident response better on the Windows platform? So if you guys have ideas, they're open and ready to listen to us.
I really appreciated you tweeted back Fire Wolfgang, by the way. That was classic.
Don't let Wolf near a Windows system. But
Wait. You keep saying that. I want to specify you need such a wolf gang because some people might be confused.
oh, not Wolf Flight, Wolfgang Gorlick.
The wolves in the room are distancing themselves.
But they're listening, and this is important. This is part of the discussion that we need to have, not with just us, but with the vendors, with Microsoft. Jeffrey Snover is actually listening and will engage you in discussions on this stuff to help make not only your life better, but everyone's life better. So today also, one of the things that I'm proud and happy to do here is release PoshSec. PoshSec, it was a project started my close friend Will Steele, and we knew and saw this lack of help that the information security community had with PowerShell, like bridging the gap. Do you really want to learn a new language? Probably not. But if I can give you the tools, or we can give you the tools to help do this, you're better off. We're all better off, and it's still all about sharing knowledge. So this was started by Will Steele. Unfortunately, Will passed away on Christmas Eve of 2 types of terminal cancer. And fortunately enough, I had some good friends, Wolfgang, Nick, Security Moe, and Rich Casera. We all took charge and started working on this. And today we're releasing version 0.1 of this. This is... It's 22 commandlets or functions that we have that help you implement the CSIS Top 20. And I know that there is a talk tomorrow on this from Ken Evans. And I want to thank him as well for guidance as we're going through this to help do this going forward. But you can download it at one of these locations. And this, there's tweets, and there'll be also notes, emails sent out at the end of the conference with this information in it. So if you want to check it out. We're also looking for people with ideas or who want to contribute or write a blog post to how this has helped or what we can change. Like I said, we're open to discussion, so feel free to ping us and stop by one of us, talk to us. We're all willing to listen. So any questions? Here's where you can find me. There's my personal GitHub stuff. And then you can find the code in here for PoshSec as well as for this talk up on there. Yeah?
What are you using for your PowerShell SSH integration?
It's just I forgot the name of the library. It's just one of those generic .NET libraries that are out there for SSH.
Sharp SSH.
Sharp SSH.
Yeah, he has to ask the junior admin.
Well, he's the one doing all the work.
Wait a minute, did you download that?
What?
On the server?
I have a question. You mentioned a couple times that when you close the PowerShell session, the command you were running just disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Have you tried using start job to push those tasks to the background?
Yes, you can use with PowerShell, as he stated, they have a job system. So I can, longer tasks, things that I need to keep it kind of more persistent, I can actually schedule things or have them run in the background or schedule them to run on other servers. So this can be a little more persistent because they use states and sessions to kind of control this. So Windows now, luckily, has something like SSH built into it so that you can remotely manage these servers, run jobs against them, control them all from one central spot without having to RDP in. I can do this all from a PowerShell console. I don't have to leave my Windows screen. I can have PowerShell up and Reddit up on the same screen and still get my work done. So, question?
Did you see Josh's talk?
No, I did not.
So two things happened in Josh's talk that I found interesting. One was in trying to establish persistence, they actually added the user to specific groups.
Mm-hmm.
So in that case, how would you pick that up?
I would pick that up with in my baselining. So what Wolf said was that there's a talk earlier today on one of the things that people do to maintain persistence is actually add users to groups. So when we go through and we prep this, we actually ran a baseline for using the PowerShell code to actually pull the groups. So we can actually go and see what groups have changed, and you can use PowerShell to pull the group name and then pull all the users underneath it. So there's different things that you can do in that situation. Yeah.
Matt, so question for you. When you're going in and you're trying to kill the process and everything else like that, I'm a bad guy in there, what are some things that they would typically do to try and keep you from doing that? Because is the PowerShell running on your system and then relaying the commands directly, or is it running on the user box?
It is running. You can run it remotely on the user box under WMI. So it's not like I'm sitting there specifically logged in. It'll probably show that there is another user logged in running under the WMI process, but it's still, I can run it remotely so you don't actually see me there unless you start dumping processes and looking, well, why is there WMI? There are things that you probably will be detected really quickly by somebody that is trying to...
What if they disable RPC?
RPC is actually, with PowerShell, you can actually use something besides that now, WS-man. So there are ways to stop this, and you're going to have to go to the local box. So PowerShell has a new protocol, and not probably new, but WS-man, which actually takes RPC out of it and does actually web calls that are encrypted and kind of obfuscated so that you don't really tell what's going across the wire, but you're not actually using straight RPC calls anymore. Anybody else? Good. Well.
Yeah, the PoshSec commandlets, are they all custom ones, or are they using?
They're all custom ones using the built-in PowerShell commandlets and language. And we don't actually, we don't rely on any third-party modules either. So this all is stuff that you should be able to download to any system and run without any prerequisites besides PowerShell.
Give me an example of one.
We can dump service names and user information, ports. There's a
Software integrity.
software integrity, software installs. I can tell you can tell which ones I didn't write.
Accounts that are past expiration, accounts that are
Accounts are admin. Pass, yeah.
Bump to the help
Wow.
desk, you're going to get to have the junior position.
Yeah. Email or tweet at Mortius Prime if you want. Enjoy. But just random things that, well, not random things, but things that are part of the controls, like if account's expired, if it's set to, if it's past its expiration date, if the password hasn't been changed in a while, things like that are all included in here. So. Yeah.
So at the end of the day, once you got everything back up and running, what'd you do with your junior admin?
Well, we decided to make him a thought leader in MySec because, because there's not, and most of the people in MySec heavily drink, and we decided, hey, let's make Wolf the leader. He's not really the leader, but he's a thought leader, at least. Enabler. That's what Wolfgang Gorlick is. Wolfgang Gorlick is an enabler. But a good one. Not the one that makes you want to shoot up, but makes you want to do good things.
This doesn't get any better, is it?
It did. I said you don't make us want to shoot up drugs. Could be worse than that. What? But probably the last time Wolf will take my phone call. Wolfgang Gorlick. Wolflight and I we're cool. All right. Thank you.